break our laws and you'll lose your family. Hello, that was the law that I grew up under, that and many other laws. And I'm reading chapter 3 of Cult Escape, The Laws That Control Me. Before I do, as I was writing this book, I had 3 phone calls from the exclusive brethren, and they said, do not write this book, you must not publish it. We forbid you to publish this book. And I said, why? I said, I'm only telling my story about the life that you brought me up in and the laws that you told me to obey. So why would you not want me to tell other people what they were? What have you got to hide? If these rules are from laws from God, even as you say they are, well, why would God be ashamed of saying all the laws and the rules that I should have been under and you are under and you think everybody should be under? So why not whistleblow and expose the whole thing? So here we go. So chapter 3, the laws that control me. The primary purpose of this chapter is to illustrate what can happen if you join a religious cult. All have their particular controlling laws and rules. This chapter is about the rules and the laws that I grew up under. So first of all, why were there laws and who did they come from? Well, coercive controlling cults, they exist by putting their members under laws. And if the members break those laws, there are consequences, there is punishment. And it's a way of keeping the members obeying what you're saying. And who did they come from? They came from the leader, and cult laws come from the leader or leadership. In the exclusive brethren case, there was just one leader always, and he determined what the laws were that would keep them separate from evil, because they had a core doctrine going back to 1847, the original person, J.N. Darby, who decided that we had to be separate from evil. So over the subsequent years, each man of God had his own version. He made it up as he went along of what evil was. It was always changing and sometimes changing back. And whatever it was, though, you had to obey. So I'm going to tell you what these laws were. Incidentally, when they changed the laws, their justification was that God has turned a corner. And so that was what we always heard when a new law came out. Let's go. Houses must be separate. That was a law that was introduced in 1984. And if your house you lived in had shared drains or driveways, you had to move. No ifs and no buts. And so we had to move from our happy childhood memoried house in leafy Wavertree Garden suburb of Liverpool, which had playing fields at the back, gardens at the front and back, great amenities. We had to move. And so we moved to a house in Mossley Hill, Liverpool. But a year later, out came another law. The houses had to be even more separate, and any houses that happened to have adjoining walls, they were not separate. We had to move. And it just so happened we had to move again. I remember hearing of an exclusive brethren farmer in the south of England who had a stone wall all the way around his farm. The wall was jointly owned by him and his neighbours. He got permission from Symington and the agreement of his surrounding neighbours, Symington the leader, to cut a fine slit down the middle of this wall using special equipment. Now he was considered separate enough, because this slit around the whole of the stone wall around his whole farm meant he was now separate. Another law, all contact with anyone who had been excommunicated was strictly forbidden. When someone was withdrawn from or put out of fellowship or kicked out, whatever it's called, whatever they called it, you were not allowed to have anything more to do with that person at all. So when my 4 grandparents left in 1970, we were forbidden to have any contact whatsoever with them. That was the end of them as far as we were concerned. And that went along with all relatives and all people who had the audacity to not follow the man of God and to leave. And I did some research as I was writing this book, and I looked at the Liverpool people, about 200, when I left in 1988. And I calculated that over 73% of those members were in families that had been separated by this law. because they all had, 73% of them had somebody in the family, and I mean close family, you know, father, mother, children, cousins, uncles and aunts, at least one person that they could have nothing more to do with. So that family was destroyed as far as being together. Over 73%. I also I went to 2 other mainstream churches, and with 800 members, and I said to them, one was Church of England, one was Methodist, and I said, how many of your members are not allowed to have normal family life with others because of the laws of your church? And the answer was 0, because they didn't have separating laws. Anyway, no marrying anyone unless they were a member of the exclusive brethren. This rule meant that there was always a potential shortage of appropriate spouses. There were many bachelors and spinsters in the exclusive brethren who never found the one they wanted to marry, and I reckon it was because they were restricted in their choice. However, if people wanted to get married, when they were engaged, they were forbidden to hold hands. Looking back, I remember courting couples after the meetings just standing together but keeping their distance, which even then did seem a bit odd. People were strongly encouraged to marry as young as possible, and most did. I remember going to a wedding in Chester. The groom was 16 and his bride 18. No visiting other churches. Law. It would be unthinkable to even visit another church apart from the fact that we had our own 5 meetings to go to on Sunday. No going to university or taking advanced levels. Law. At that time, further education was seen as a danger to young people growing up in the exclusive brethren. I was aware that the viewpoints would take us away from the sanctity and sterile safety of their 11 meetings a week lifestyle, another hallmark of cults. Don't let children hear anything that is not in line with their doctrine or their values. So the opportunity of excelling for myself and for all young people really, and achieving our full potential and subsequently going on to careers that potentially could have made a great contribution to society was severely stunted. Law, you were not allowed to do jury service. When I was 18, I was called up to do jury service. I would have gladly gone, but the exclusive brethren told me I was not allowed to, as it would involve making joint decisions with worldly people. Separation from the exclusive brethren, man of God's versions of evil, was the root of all decisions. And here was another one. All must have photos of the men of God on their lounge walls. On every lounge wall, in every household, in every exclusive brethren house across the whole world, there were a set of photographs of all the men of God, known as the leaders of the recovery of the truth. These men were revered, titled, and were the sole rudders that have steered the changing doctrines of separation from evil. I remember often wondering why J.N. Darby had thick sideburns and F.A.R. Raven had a thick beard and large moustache, and James Taylor Sr. had a moustache and a dicky bow. That worldly appearance would have got you withdrawn from when I was in the exclusive brethren. Anything like this, you'd be kicked out and you're separated from your family, maybe for life, if you never repented from this. Mind you, when we all get to heaven, who knows, we might find that Peter, James and John all had short backs and sides, just like the exclusive brethren. Maybe they were right. Oh no, J.N. Darby, he wasn't right then, was he? No, forget that. All over the age of 18, subscribed to weekly ministry books from the man of God. The man of God's would all the meetings he took each week, we recorded, and then on a Monday night, they would be delivered in white booklets, leaflets, pamphlets, whatever you call them, to every household in the whole world, so that they could keep in touch with what he was saying. And again, it's another cultic thing for the leaders. They've got to keep tabs on, keep control, keep in that position of leadership. And this is one of the ways that they do it. No joining of trade unions, any unions, or having a job where you must sign the Secrecy Act was law. It didn't used to be that way. My father used to work in the Midland Bank for 20 years until at some point this new rule was brought in by this pig farmer from Letchie, North Dakota, who he had never spoken to. this leader Symington, had the power over thousands of exclusive brethren who instantly had to hand in their notice and quit their careers. While this created huge difficulties for my father, who was happy in his secure job, he obeyed without question. Everyone obeyed without question. It's another hallmark of coercive cultic control. It's what you do when you're under it. Laws for women's appearance. Women were not allowed to have their hair cut. Their hair was not to be tied up but left loose and covered with a headscarf at every meeting and whenever they left the house. For a time, the girls were forced to wear these headscarves in school too. I felt so sorry for them, having to go into school and sit in the class and playgrounds wearing these headscarves. Then that rule was relaxed, God turned a corner, whereby they only had to wear a token-like ribbon in their hair outside the house, but still a headscarf for the meetings. Trousers were forbidden, as was makeup and jewellery. Tattoos or piercings were unthinkable. What is worth pointing out is that the man of God's definition of evil changed over the years. A rule that once caused the split of a family later was changed so that what was used to be seen as a sin now became acceptable. Therefore, if those who committed this then forbidden evil offence and who had been withdrawn from because of it had done the same thing when the man of God has called that offence acceptable and pure, then that person would have remained in the exclusive brethren and their family would not have been split and separated and destroyed. A specific example of this is an old friend who got cut off from his family for having a mobile phone. Mobile phones were worldly and strictly forbidden. Years later, however, the law was changed. God had turned a corner, and all of a sudden, owning a mobile phone was good and acceptable. Do you get that? So therefore, his family would not have been separated, split up and destroyed if the law was he could have had a mobile phone. It wasn't. And yet when the law changed, they just say God has turned a corner. This is what cults do. This is how they control their members. It's very, very simple. They put laws upon them, and through many reasons of which I'll go into the psychology of it in later chapters in this book, they're able to have complete control and dominion over human beings, men, women and children. So there's just in the book I've got miscellaneous laws, and there's many of them. I've got a list of 33. I'm not just going to read you 5 more tiny ones which I wanted to just mention for some reason, I don't know why. Children were banned from using computers at school lest they be corrupted by their satanic influence. I know why. It's because nowadays God has turned a corner and they can use computers apparently. Another law, computer technology was called the work of the devil. Another one, that commerce was not to be brought into the assembly at all. No commerce. Apparently now it's commerce is the main thing. Giving to charities is not acceptable, and a man was not acceptable, and a man was not allowed to eat or sleep with his wife if one of them was shut up. So they didn't just control where you lived, the length of your hair, your clothes, where you had to be every day and every night, what jobs you couldn't do, who you couldn't marry. They also control your sex life. And that is what you get if you join a religious cult. You will get laws put on you. And maybe you can ask yourself right now, are you in a group that coercively controls you? Is that what you really want? Right, I've gone into a lot of detail in this chapter, primarily to make the following point, and I'll end on this point. Religious cults control people through their laws. They all have their own peculiar laws. Many have certain laws that if people leave them, their members are forbidden from having normal family life with those they have left. Their laws, and therefore the cult, separate families. Beware. And I'll see you next chapter, which is going to be chapter 4, Breaking the Rules. I'll see you soon.